Hello. My name is Tom Frawley, and I'm the Executive Director of the Schuylkill River Passenger Rail Authority. Schuylkill River Passenger Rail Authority was created just over 2 years ago by the 3 counties in which the rail line between Reading and Philadelphia operates. So that would be Berks, Montgomery, and Chester counties. Bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. This created a funding stream to support development of passenger rail that moved the 3 counties' effort to the next level. The Schuylkill River Passenger Rail Authority is participating in a program by the Federal Railroad Administration called the Corridor Identification and Development Programs. We are definitely in that group of a few projects that are at the very front of the wave. And we're very fortunate that we've been super aggressive in responding to FRA's requirements. We are right now in step 1. This is sort of a scoping exercise where we develop a project management plan, we perform a gap analysis, and then to develop a statement of work, a schedule, and a budget for going into step 2, which is where we prepare a service development plan. Step 3 would be preliminary engineering and environmental documentation. Our proposal, which was submitted in March of 2023, followed a very particular set of guidelines identified by the Federal Railroad Administration, and that included demonstrating that you were an agency or an entity that was eligible to receive funding. That's very important. And as a multi-county agency in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we are eligible. And to demonstrate ability to manage a project of this type and size, to identify resources. So between the planning departments of the 3 counties, the financial health of the 3 counties and their financial commitments to the project, hiring myself as executive director, all those steps came together in the application to demonstrate that we are a capable agency to advance this project through planning and design and into development. SRPRA is one of just a handful of projects that are at the point that we are in the FRA's Corridor Identification and Development Program. And in all honesty, those other projects are, for the most part, enhancements of existing services, additional frequencies, route extensions, things of that nature. So our project is the first essentially new project that's at this stage in the development program. At this time, we're envisioning Amtrak using their model to forecast the ridership, which has 2 benefits. One, we don't have to prove credibility because they've used this model on multiple other projects in the past. And with them being the operator, we don't have to convince the operator that the ridership numbers are real. We want to cover the clock face. Say they go to Philadelphia for a sport event, or a cultural event, or for dinner, or for some combination of those. But they want to be able to get home. And, if the last train leaves at 7 o'clock, that's not feasible. So we need to have some evening service that enables people to get home. Here we are now with an approach to say intercity rail. It fully leverages the freight infrastructure that's here because we can be compatible with the freight trains. It's not to say that we don't have to invest. There would be capital investment to create more flexibility and more capacity if we do our job properly. Not only will we make enough improvements that the existing railroad can accommodate the proposed passenger trains, but also will help the freight trains operate more efficiently. In Reading, now recently there's been a project where the Greater Reading Chamber Alliance, GRCA, sponsored, with the help of some state grant money, a study to look at where the station location should be. And they've landed on the historic station in Reading at Franklin Street. They're also sponsoring some work at transit-oriented development and how the return of passenger rail can be coordinated with zoning and other considerations in the development of the city to try to fully leverage the passenger train for the economic benefit of the community. In Pottstown, which is where we are standing today, the historic station does survive, and it is in use. Part of it here is leased out for a local magistrate's office, and it is owned, as I understand, by the municipality. So it would be potentially available to be renovated and partially restored, renovated for this purpose. In the alternative, there is property on the opposite side of the tracks that's also in public hands, and it might be more advantageous there. We have an intermodal connectivity opportunity here because the Pottstown area rapid transit bus service does focus as its central node on the train station site. And you have access for other modes such as bicycle and walking, obviously through the community, but also on the Schuylkill River Trail, which passes right over there. Phoenixville also has its historic station intact, older than the other two in Pottstown and Reading, interestingly, but currently used as an event venue. And the question is whether or not that facility could be used, or whether a new facility, perhaps on the other side of Bridge Street, might be more appropriate and as part of a more comprehensive and integrated redevelopment effort on that site. So there's a lot of possibilities in Phoenixville, and those are still being studied. We've got outstanding infrastructure as a starting point. Norfolk Southern's Harrisburg division between Reading and Philadelphia is an excellent railroad. Very well-maintained track. It's got positive train control, which is a signal system that's required for passenger trains as well as lines that have a freight traffic above a certain threshold. But the fact that we have a good piece of railroad to start with, a lot of good infrastructure to start with, it should be relatively easy and relatively fast to implement the service. So we have a great starting point. We're very happy with that. But even though the process of finalizing the statement of work schedule and budget is taking a little longer than we had hoped, we are doing other things. We're working with Norfolk Southern as the host railroad. There would be others further down the line, south of here. When we get into Philadelphia, we could be using a piece of SEPTA, we could be using a piece of CSX, and then we would be using a piece of Amtrak to get to 30th Street Station. So there's all these conversations with host railroads or prospective host railroads. Well, Amtrak as our proposed operator would actually run the trains. We would be using rolling stock that they would provide, presumably funded through PennDOT's participation in procurement of services for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And their crews, so the engineer on the train, the conductor on the train, those people on the train would in fact be employees of Amtrak. Amtrak has a lot of advantages to be the operator, although the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the corridor program have a lot of flexibility. So we could use a private operator, we could use somebody else. But Amtrak offers a lot of advantages because Philadelphia is a major node in the Amtrak Northeast Corridor network. So there are lots of resources there in terms of the trains themselves, the crews, and then of course the second half of the route ultimately. Remember, initially this would be between Reading and Philadelphia, but ultimately it would go from Reading to Philadelphia and then all the way to New York as a one-seat ride. And now you're on Amtrak's Northeast Corridor between Philadelphia and New York. So it's the easiest, and we believe the most cost-effective solution to have Amtrak be the operator. When this program was created, we had a confluence of a lot of very positive circumstances between the funding, which has always been critical, because it's not cheap, there's a lot of money involved. The willingness and cooperation of the three counties, which was a key factor in our selection, our project being selected by the Federal Railroad Administration. Bipartisanship. All three county boards of commissioners voted unanimously, all three bipartisan, in favor of creating the authority. So we have support across the spectrum. Transportation is typically not a partisan issue, transportation and infrastructure. So we're very optimistic in that regard. But in the grand scheme, this project, going into the corridor program where we are now, going through these steps and getting out and having funding in place for at least part of the step beyond the corridor program, which would be final design and construction. I mean, nothing in this life is truly certain, but I would say that the odds are very, very high that this project will go to full implementation. The fact that there's so many people who are so enthusiastic and working so hard, and even among the public, that when people are fully informed about what we're doing and how we're doing it, they get excited and they get enthusiastic. So I'm very, very happy to say that across the board, we have the support of our congressional delegation, our state legislative delegation, all the different agencies and authorities involved up and down the corridor. Once again, nothing is certain, truly certain in this life, but I would have to say, given these circumstances, we are going to see this go to full implementation. So as we transition from summer into autumn of 2024 and work towards transitioning out of the corridor program step 1 into step 2, we remain excited, we remain enthusiastic, we remain determined, and we hope you do too. People look at projects like ours and you say, you know, it's going to take years to get passenger rail service. And you say, well, that is true, but in the context of programs like this throughout the country and over the decades, that's light speed. That's warp speed. We are, you know, sometimes projects languish in planning for 20 years or more. So we're working with FRA right now to finalize those 3 documents, and the hope is that we can come up with a schedule that is achievable but also expeditious to get us into then preliminary design or preliminary engineering as well as the NEPA documentation.